This week, we're looking at Commandments 6 and 7. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. These two commandments remind me of brownies. So Sam made triple chunk brownies today for Snack and Chat. And just as an excuse to be able to eat right now, I'm going to have some. It's pretty good. This is going to keep me going for a long time. The ingredients. I have no idea why they call it triple chunk. There's not 3 different kinds of chunks. I'm confused, but there are 3 basic groups of ingredients. Now, when I think about that this morning, first group of ingredients are the cakey ingredients. So what would the cakey ingredients be of brownies? There's 2. Flour, sugar and flour. Yes, they're brownies. So it's sugar first and then flour. I want to think about the first ingredients of these 2 commandments, murder and adultery. What's the direct meaning of the first one? You shall not murder. What's the basic sort of stuff of that?
Shouldn't take someone else's wife.
Right? It involves killing. And specifically murder, in which the idea that it's for personal or illegitimate reasons. The Hebrew behind it is pointing towards the idea of taking someone's life for personal reasons or illegitimate reasons. Just kind of a baseline sort of thing. And with adultery, that's where the most basic of vows are broken. What has been promised in public has been broken. So it involves 1 or 2 married people. So at a baseline, that's murder and adultery. That's the first ingredient. But I want to take it a little bit further. This picture is supposed to make you think of medieval Latin. The haircut should help you. I'm going to get a haircut soon. I'm going to go with one of those. Wouldn't that be nice? I just had to change your thought. I'm not going to get one of those. The first ingredient is, I want to use the Latin phrase here, mutatis mutandis. Drop that in your conversations, it's fun. Mutatis mutandis. It's a legal term, but it also has a theological underpinning. Its meaning is with the respective differences having been considered. Now for us, we are created in the image of God, creatures of God, stamped with His imprint. Since the fall, we've been tarnished by sin. We are stained with sin by nature and because of what we do. But it doesn't change the fact that we are in the image of God. These 2 commandments remind us that the people around us have tremendous value. They don't earn their value to us because of what they do. People have value because they are created in the image of God. We don't go around murdering people. We keep our promises, the most basic of promises, because people have value given by God. So that's a baseline ingredient that these 2 commandments should remind us of. But there's more ingredients. So we've got sugar and flour. What's the next ingredient of triple chunk brownies? Chocolate, specifically chocolate chips. Yes, semi-sweet chocolate chips, something like that. Here's the second ingredient that we're going to be talking about. I have no idea what that says. All I know is it's Hebrew. We're going to think about a Hebrew word. When I look at this, I think Brit. But it's not Britain. It's more like Berit, covenant. These 10 commandments are given within covenant, right? God is saying, I promise to you I will be your God, and you're promising to me you will be my people. And when you are my people, these are the guides to help you live as my people. Exodus chapter 19. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. These 10 commandments aren't just sort of things out of the blue that are being thrown to the people. It's a part of how you live as God's people. It's a promise back and forth. Now, think about this. You shall not murder. For a nation is just starting. So Israel is moving into the promised land, going to be moving into the promised land, going to be living as a nation. Why is it important to have this rule? Kind of important, isn't it? There needs to be justice. So it kind of makes sense to have this rule for the social fabric. To be a covenant people, there needs to be justice. And there's also a reminder of the intersection of loving God and loving people. If you love God and obey Him, you're going to love people. You're going to avoid killing them. It's a slow bar to cross, but it reminds us that we need to love people. Now with adultery, what would the covenant meaning, what would the covenant purpose be behind making this a big deal as an early nation? Yes. Yeah. I think there's a couple of things at play here. I'm going to get to Alan's point. One thing is, it's a foundation. Marriage is a foundation. The home is a foundation for what God is looking to do. Remember last week's honor your father and mother? It's kind of important to have a father and mother to be honored. God is looking for a social fabric, a foundation to build from. So it makes sense that this is a big deal. As Alan is saying, it points to something more. So let's go through this analogy together to practice. What's the first picture? R2 as R2. Yes. Oh, you're so good at this. God uses marriage as an analogy, time and again, of His relationship with His people. God talks about His love for His people in terms of marriage, and He also talks about their waywardness as spiritual adultery. So doesn't it make sense that God is going to make it clear that adultery is a very big issue? Because when we break that vow, that promise amongst each other, it reflects on our breaking our vow with God Himself. There's the second ingredient. A third ingredient of the triple chunk brownie. Not exactly frosting. This is what came in the box. Sort of. Yeah, this is all in the mix. Well, it's cocoa processed with alkali. So it becomes the syrup. Once you add the liquid ingredients and the other things, it'll become syrupy. What's with cocoa processed with alkali anyway? Have you ever seen cocoa processed with acid? Cocoa processed with large rocks? I don't know. It's always cocoa processed with alkali. That'll be next week's sermon. We'll find out why. There's a third ingredient with this covenant. We've started at the baseline. We've started at mutatis mutandis, the idea that we all have basic value, and these commandments remind us of that. It reminds us of Berit, of covenant, of being in relationship with God. And it also reminds us of Greek. We're doing a hat trick on languages today. We're going to do a Greek word. Cardia. You know what this means. If I go to the doctor and get an echocardiogram, what's being checked? My heart. Cardia. See, you know Greek. Look at that. This commandment is about a heart issue. And this is what Jesus brings out. Matthew chapter 5. Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Jesus is talking about the fulfillment of the law. Not just going through the motions, not behavior modification, something that happens on the inside. The idea from the inside out. When we love God deeply, we want to live according to his plan. We want to live out his purposes for our lives. And so Jesus talks about the heart issue that goes along with these commandments. This is what stings. The murder part is good not to murder. We've kind of got that. What Jesus talks about is hard. You've heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment." But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, "You fool," will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Did you catch verse 22? But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Jesus is linking anger and murder together here because he's getting at issues of the heart from the inside out. Let's be honest. What Jesus says here, we pass off. We joke about it. We make light of it. Oh, I should do that. We say that we're going to get to it, or we justify that it's okay for us to be angry with this person because they really deserve it. I don't think Jesus is joking here. And did you notice the immediacy? Jesus said, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother. There is immediacy. This is something that needs to be addressed. He's not saying, sit back and think about it and draw up some ideas. Let's do something about it. I want you to think about names. Names of people that you struggle with. Honestly. We can all say, oh, I'm not really angry with that person. Think of some relationships that are strained. What are you going to do about it? I think Jesus is encouraging us today to do something. That might be praying about it today. That might be making a phone call or writing a letter today. Start today. Now with adultery. Once again, Jesus takes it to a heart issue. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than your whole body go into hell. If you're going to measure the strength of a chain, do you measure the strongest link or the weakest link? Do you catch what Jesus is doing here about marriage? He's not saying, let's judge a marriage based on its strongest links or what is going great. He says, look at what's the weakest spot and address it. Tear it out, cut it off. That seems kind of drastic to me. Ripping out eyes and cutting off hands, as most people consider kind of drastic, I think. Maybe it's important for us to once again not just write this off as Jesus setting a high ideal. What if Jesus expects us to live this way? What if he expects us to set boundaries in which we are mindful of our weakest links? What we watch, what we read, what we listen to, what we think about, what we invest our time in, who we spend the most time with. I'm not looking to be legalistic about everything, but let's be honest about what gets our minds going in the wrong direction. Tear it out and cut it off. We can play the what-if game in our minds of, oh, well, what if I dated this person longer? Or what if this happened? Or what if... That's a dangerous game to play. And Jesus is making it clear, whatever your weakest link is, be honest about it and tear it out. Now, there's something about brownies that's important. Is that you need to have all the ingredients. I've eaten flour before, and I did it as a warm-up this week, and I decided that's a bad idea. Because you drink water afterwards and it just turns into paste. So it's important to have all the ingredients. Stir them up. Bon appetit. A little dry. It's good. I'm gonna choke to death. Should have practiced that one. The law is important. It's not the end in itself. We shouldn't be consuming the law as if that's the final product. Not murdering, no adultery, no anger. Setting boundaries are tremendously important. But we're not looking to just be better people. That's eating brownie mix dry. It has some taste, but it's not what it's intended to be. What we're looking to do is to glorify God with our lives and to enjoy him forever. And he's laid out a plan for that. And some of that is these commandments, in which it's not a burden to just wade through. It's part of living out the life that God has intended for us. Don't be satisfied with brownie mix. Look for living out the life God has for us. And I hope that we're serious about anger, about today, changing that with the relationship that we have, of setting boundaries that today we make a change and we're honest about the weakest link. Let's pray. Father, thank you that you are our God and have called us to be your people. Ask that our lives will reflect the commitment that we've made to you as Lord and Savior. Continue to show us how we can glorify your name and to enjoy you forever. Help us today by doing that through honestly addressing anger and honestly setting boundaries. Amen.